Hello family, welcome back to Transformations. I'm your host Rick Kelly and hope everyone is doing well today, staying cool. It's supposed to be 95 degrees around here, so we're over here in the shade enjoying a little bit of breeze for the day. Since it's Friday, I figured I would give y'all a little story from the vaults. Um, this one's taking place after the last story, on down a year or so later, and so I was already a convicted felon at this point, but I had come out and I ended up moving to Wilmington and started my life over there. Came out, went to Charlotte, and had started using again right off the bat because I used in prison. And so I had gotten back to a hopeless state pretty fast, and I was like, I'm moving back down to Wilmington, starting over. So I moved back down there, and and went to a halfway house program for 6 months, stayed clean for 6 months, and ended up moving into my own apartment after that. I'd gotten my license back. I'd gone a couple years without having a license. So I had 3 DWIs in the past, last one in 99, so this was about '02, I guess. So I had got my license back and was driving again, and during this time, I had a real good friend down there that we had worked together over the years before previously while I was married, living down there. And he had his own flooring company, and so me and him were lifting buddies. And so we were lifting at Big Gold's down there. And I'd started working for him before I moved out, and then after I moved out into my own place. And he wasn't necessarily an addict, but he used marijuana. And that was always, one of my first loves. And so I ended up going out with him and smoking one day, and that was it. And I'd gotten back onto a marijuana maintenance program, and that lasted about 6 months before my drug of choice came back in. And we were also, like I said, we were real big lifting buddies. So he had actually used steroids before, and I could tell, I didn't know, necessarily. And then he had come back up to doing a cycle, and I was like, I don't want to use it. And then he started, and I was like, I'm not going to watch my partner get big, and I'm not. And so I'm as big now as I ever was then. I was about 220 probably before I'd ever used, and benching like 300 pounds. Well, a couple weeks into it, I said, I'm not really feeling, he said, man, you're getting big. 2 weeks after that, my bench shot up from 300 to 405 on the end of my workouts. And I'd gained 20 pounds in weight. And so this isn't the best combination for somebody that's got anger management issues already, as you can tell. So we had finished up. Oh, breeze blowing hard. So we had finished up cycle, and he had actually had to he went to Colorado, I believe, to do some snowboarding. And so I was by myself, and as an addict, I didn't have any other friends I was hanging out with. So I ended up bumping into somebody that I'd been in prison with out at the prison, and at a gas station. And so bumped into him. Well, I ended up going out with him and smoking crack, and went on a 7-day binge. My buddy was gone all week. I went on a 7-day bender, stayed awake the entire time. I didn't eat. I can't even remember a thing that I ate during that time. So I dropped 20 pounds in that 1 week. I had skin hanging off of my stomach. So that was about how good those effects ended up being. So anyway, I started my apartment and everything, and started hanging around a lot of bad people, of course. By this time, I had started becoming a little bit of a worse person than I was to begin with, I guess. Slowly our morals start to slip away anyway. But I had started driving for a escort service, and I had gone out one day. Now, this is to lead up to this story of this day, what had happened. I'd been on a 15-day bender. I'd been awake 7 days straight, fell asleep sitting up on my couch, and then was up for another 7 days. So I'd been awake 14 days out of 15 on my mother. And if anybody knows anything about that, you start to hallucinate and get a little a little more crazy than you already are. So I had taken her on to drop her off at a date at Carolina Beach at a hotel down there. So dropped her off. She hands me some crack and says, "Here, we come back in 30 minutes." So I'm like, all right. So she hands me that. Well, me being the crackhead that I was like, all right, I'm just gonna hope a little puff here, and looked around, didn't do anything. I bent down and hit something. Kind of looked up, and I noticed off in the distance there was a cop at a stop sign up the road, and he was just sitting there. And just I couldn't tell if he was watching me or what, but so they ended up coming in, pulling in, and pulled behind me, everything. Now I had a little slot in my door where I threw my pipe. It was kind of hard to find, if you know anything. And then I had a one of these lighter leashes, if you ever seen, a little rubber thing that a lighter pops into, and it's on one of those little keychain things. And I had my dope stashed in there. So I was sitting there fiddling around with the cops and, trying to throw them some shit. And they ended up getting me out of the car. Talked me out of the car, and I got out and, searched me. They ain't going to find this. They ain't going to. And by this time, there was already 3 cop cars there, lights, everything. And it's middle of summer, hot as can be out there. And out of my mind, of course. And so the captain ended up, by the time they couldn't find anything, and the captain went over there and he pulled that lighter and he popped it open, and stuff fell out of it into his hand, and he goes, "Looky here, boys, what we got right here." About that time I kicked his hand. Now I'm in handcuffs at this point, so I can't even do anything with my arms. So I kicked his hand and knocked that out in the straight. Oh! And the Royal Rumble ensued after that, and it was just a free-for-all, me kicking and everybody jumping at me, and they pulled out the taser and the spray. They were tasing me and spraying me, and I did not feel one thing. I'm sitting there hollering, "Give it to me!" And so about that time, though, now they had already knocked me down. About that time, I saw one of them, young cop, sitting there with the real pistol on me, and he was shaking. And that's the one thing that stopped me. I stopped. I was like, "Oh Lord, this guy's panicking. It's over. It is over. He's about to squeeze that trigger." And that was it. I let him take me on in then, and so I ended up catching another felony behind that one for cocaine and assaulting an officer. But the assaulting officer was just a misdemeanor one. They had I think I had to pay for a new uniform for one of them and something else. But so I ended up staying in jail though for 30 days. So when I got out, my apartment was gone, and I'd been letting people stay there. During that time, somebody left my house and robbed a bank from my house. That's the kind of people I was hanging out with. And I got out, and I had everything was gone. The car had been towed, and I had an old Taurus that was pretty worthless anyway, smoking and everything. And I called the place up, and they was like, "Yeah, you can come get it for $1,000. I was like, "That car's not worth $1,000. He's like, "Well, come over, sign it over." I was like, but got out, got a job, and went back to the halfway house, and got clean again. So I'll leave that story there. There'll be more to tell into the next one. And there was a lot of ups and downs around that time. Kept trying to get clean, but was having a lot of difficulty. But that one, I don't think anybody got hurt too bad. So it was kind of funny when I look back on it. But amazed I made it through. Definitely. When I saw that gun shaking, that was all I needed to see, man. That was, here it comes. God looks out. All right. Well, I hope y'all enjoy that one, and y'all have a great weekend. I just got through working out and get ready to head out for a little bit and see what's going on, and we'll get back with you with some more stuff maybe this weekend. I'll try to throw you something extra and throw a little fitness thing in there. I've noticed improvements on my physically a little bit. I've had to step down my miles just a little bit because of keep from getting injured too hard right now. I've got a couple of aches and pains I've got to nurse. All right. Well, Miss Mildred is going to tell y'all goodbye. Y'all be good, and we will see y'all in the next one. Peace, y'all.